Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Motor City Mad Mouth Show. Yes, I'm Scott Morgan Roth, the Motor City Mad Mouth. Mild is not my name, Mad is, and this is my book called Lessons from the Microphone, Tuning into the Enduring Wisdom of Visionary Leaders, published last November, and actually got good news coming for you, everybody. We're going to have an audio book coming up real soon, hopefully in about a month from now. I have somebody currently working on it at the moment. So with that said, I want to talk about the Detroit Lions. You can get this book, by the way, on Amazon Kindle, as well as Barnes and Nobles, and any other information can be found on the South Florida Tribune website, www.southfloridatribune.com. With that said, let me introduce my co-host for the show, Jeremy Ballrick. Welcome back, Jeremy.
Glad to be here, Scott.
And George Eichhorn.
Hello, good to be back.
All right, talking about the Detroit Lions tonight, we're going to get a little Detroit Red Wings action as well. So let's have at it. Takeaways from the 26-23 win. Incredible fan turnout for the Lions in NRG Stadium, wasn't it, Jeremy?
Well, our Lions fans travel well, so well that a Texans fan asked one of us Lions fans, "What, do they shut down the whole city and fly with them?" So I thought that was pretty comical, but it was about 25% filled to start the game. And by the end of the game, it looked like it was 70% Lions fans. There was a guy that took a video. A guy was wearing a C.J. Stroud jersey, and as soon as the game-winning field goal went in, he shut it off. He had a St. Brown jersey underneath.
That is funny. Well, I got to tell you, many years ago when I was attending college at the University of South Florida, the Lions and the Tampa Bay Bucks, Tampa Stadium was filled with a lot of Lions fans. It really was. So I felt like I didn't feel out of place there at all. You know, Wayne Fonts at the time was the coach of the Lions, and I went to the school with his son named Mike. It was pretty neat. We'd go out to eat after the game and all that. So Lions fans have definitely traveled well. I've traveled with them a lot, so I certainly know that the Honolulu Blue travels quite well. All right, George, some observations about the Lions' newfound home field advantage in the heart of Texas.
Well, some people have a lot of money. That's what I say always. I mean, it's not cheap to travel. You got to take a plane typically, except in the Midwest, obviously. You can go by car. But yeah, they're very, very good travelers. I said something to my wife the other day. I said, what happens? These people go back to work Monday morning? I mean, I don't know how all these Lion fans get this time off, too, because it's typically not just a day in, day out, but they can be. But I mean, yeah, a lot of them either must call in sick or start late on Monday for their jobs. I don't know. That's beside the point. The point is that they're passionate. Like you said, they got a great following, and they can't get tickets in Detroit because it's sold out. So I think that's another factor that they could see the Lions on the road and still obtain tickets somehow, as opposed to Ford Field.
Last time I saw the Lions play in Houston, they were playing at the Houston Astrodome, playing against the Houston Oilers, and Barry Sanders went ahead and got his 10,000th yard over against the Oilers. Yeah, I remember. That was a great memory. I enjoyed the Houston Astrodome, of course. Little did I know they would eventually put another stadium next to it. And now I actually have been reading reports that they're actually may have a way to go out there and redevelop that site. Won't get into it on tonight's show at all, but it'd be good if they can do something with the Astrodome. It's a historical place, and people in the Detroit area know about historical places. Some are preserved, some are not, but it looks like there are plans for it happening in the Astrodome. But we're only talking about the crowd. Now we're going to talk about the game. Dan Campbell obviously made a classy move by giving Zadarius Smith the night off for the bye week. Jeremy, some thoughts about that?
Wow. There's not a lot to say about the bye week, but it's crazy. You know, everybody's talking about the teams that we played against and their injuries and stuff like that. And since the bye week, we lost Aiden Hutchinson the game after the bye.
Right.
And yet we're still winning without him. And let's put that into perspective. That would be the equivalent of the Chiefs losing Chris Jones. That would be the equivalent of Roquan Smith going out of the Baltimore Ravens lineup. You know, you're not talking about just another player or just a good player. You're talking about a guy that was being called a generational talent. And he was leading, after 5 weeks into the season, he was leading for Defensive Player of the Year because he was leading in pressures. He was leading in sacks. He was leading in tackles for loss. You know, and the Lions have been overcoming that the entire time. And the greatest thing about that Houston Texans game was seeing the guy they just traded for who had to go all week to Florida to straighten his house up after the hurricane because it was his bye week, and he decided to show up and help coach the D line with Terrell Williams in between drives.
Okay. George, some thoughts about the move?
Yeah. Well, and I think that he demonstrated he's such a team player. He's going to fit in perfectly in Detroit. Like you said, Jeremy, I mean, to see him on the sidelines and rooting the guys and hollering and smiling and tapping them on the head after they made a good play. I mean, that's a dream player that you obtain that has that kind of enthusiasm, that kind of talent. I applaud. I do. I applaud Aaron and I applaud Campbell for having him sit out. And I say that because when you look at the total picture, the season, how long it's going to be for Detroit, they hope to go very, very deep. We all know that. Everybody's hoping for a Super Bowl appearance at least. And the fact of the matter is you got a guy there that might not have had any time off. So I like it. I like it for that reason alone. It wasn't a selfish decision. It was a decision that helped, he felt, the player as much as anyone else. And so I it was risky. I'll admit it. It was risky because we haven't had a great pass attack and a rush, after Hutchinson went out, as you guys know. And, you want to put him in right away. But I tell you what, I mean, this shows me a lot of class and a lot of smarts by saying, man, we're tempted to put him in, but the long haul of the season works to the advantage of Smith and the Lions.
Well, let's not kid yourself. Campbell played the game. So does Lazarius Smith,
Yep.
player to player. Takes a week off. Lions end up winning the football game. And it didn't stop Mr. Smith from playing that game called coaching on the sidelines. He's still a part of the team. Great move. Nobody got hurt. I guess I joke around that when Brian Branch got kicked out of the Packers game, the best thing about that for him was he didn't get hurt either, and he was in the locker room, and the Lions got away with that one. So the Lions, to me, are getting away with certain things in a good way so that they're able to keep players healthy for different reasons. So as we talk about that, Jared, go ahead, Jeremy. You have something you want to add to that?
Yeah, I do have one little key note I want to add. While everybody was worried about the production and what we were going to do without Hutchinson, in the games he played, we were generating 22 pressures per game,
right,
and 2.6 sacks. Do you realize that we generated 19 pressures per game and 2.4 sacks per game? So there wasn't as big of a drop off as everybody thought there would be.
Mm-hmm.
They just had to do it differently. It wasn't as pretty. They had to use more linebackers and cornerback and safety blitzes. They had to do it in different ways. And that's the other thing. While Hutchinson was on the field, we only had to blitz 14.6% of the time. We blitzed so much since he's been hurt that the Lions rank at 38.6% of the time they blitz now over the season. So think about that. To go 5 games at 14.6 and blitz so much in the last 4 that you're up to 38.6, that's a 24% increase. That means you're averaging almost 45% blitzes through those 4 games.
Yeah, but I'm going to piggyback on what you said last week, and that's this, okay? The Lions being able to wait for Zadarius Smith brought the price down, and I'm going to leave it on that note because they were able to go ahead and bring the price down and ended up getting the 5th and the 6th round picks versus the 4th, and we'll leave it there. Other things I want to talk about with the game, Jared Goff had 5 interceptions, but don't put too much stock in that stat. Number one was a Hail Mary, 2 were 2 tip balls, there were 2 legitimate interceptions. So, Jeremy, I don't care. I don't think Jared Goff cares about his MVP chances, only the W. So why don't you break that stat down a little bit more? Bear in mind, we have a lot of stuff to get to. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, it was an awful game. But at the same time, if you look, it went 3/4 of an awful game because he had 2 picks in the 3rd quarter, too. And those 2 were the awful ones. That's the one where he just sailed it right to people, and it was like, what are you doing? When he woke up, and nobody wants to talk about it, was after the helmet hit on the late hit by the defensive end that wasn't called. He's sitting there looking right at the ref. I mean, he really looked, he goes, hey, because of what happened to Branch the week before.
Right.
But if you actually looked after every drive, after every interception, Goff didn't look right mentally with his helmet off on the sideline. I think that helmet to hit woke him up, and all of a sudden the old Jared Goff shows up because then he goes 6 of 8.
Right. Okay. Fair enough. George, some thoughts about Goff?
Well, stat wise, yeah, it looks horrible. I mean, you don't ever want to see a quarterback on your side, at least throwing that many interceptions. But like you said, one of them was the Hail Mary. But don't forget, he also threw a lot of passes into the ground. He's smart that way, though. I mean, it wasn't intentional grounding. There was no penalties called. And a couple of my friends says, "Oh yeah, but look at how many he missed. He missed this receiver, that receiver, he threw it." No, he was knowing that the ball wasn't going to get there anyways. So, but in the total picture, it was not one of his best games. It really wasn't, and we know that you just don't give Detroit and Goff the ball like they did with time on the clock still to go. I mean, and God bless Matthew Stafford, he was great at that too. But Goff is and these Lions, you're foolish if you try to give Detroit time on that clock with a chance to either tie or win. That being said, yeah. I don't give a darn about MVP votes and all that. Too bad. I mean, the Lions have to focus where it should be, and that's on getting that Super Bowl, getting there and winning it. So, no, not one of his better games, but yeah, the hit on his head. I'm glad Jeremy brought that up because that was a missed call by the refs.
Well, all thing I noticed about it is he looked uncomfortable all game. It didn't seem like one of those where I'm going to go out there and just start hot and stay hot. I mean, he looked a little uncomfortable. Was that attributed to part of what the Texans were doing pass rush wise? I don't know. We're not going to get into a whole thing with Jobber about that. But he did look uncomfortable. And when Jared Goff is uncomfortable, there's a few more extra incompletions, and as a result, had a few more interceptions. Unfortunately, they count as 5. It doesn't, regardless of the style for how they were thrown. No big deal. Lions ended up with the win nonetheless. Amon Ross St. Brown set a new franchise record with 7 straight games with a receiving touchdown. My goodness, another franchise record, right, Jeremy? How many can we get in 1 year, and how many more are we going to get?
What, the first time we've been 8-1 since 1951?
Yeah, right. Yeah, I know.
I mean, you're
Yeah.
talking. We're in rarefied air here, and it's one of the reasons why us fans, real as a fan, and I'm not talking about the media. I'm talking about fans in general. They don't know how to act right now because we've never been like this before. We're almost guaranteed double back to back double digit win season. You've never been able to say that about the Detroit Lions. So here we are. We're seeing greatness in front of us, and some of us old heads are scared to say it. But you know what? The media's right. You're seeing it on every sports network. This is a favorite team for the Super Bowl this year. And anybody that doesn't think so, they're blind to what's going on.
Okay. Funny, I was watching First Take today. Stephen A. Smith had the Lions #1 on his A-list, and he stayed with them again for the second straight week, despite the fact that they won ugly. But nevertheless, you know what? Hey, listen, I give the guy credit. At least he's sticking to his guns on some things that he definitely believes in. So we'll leave it at that. George, continue.
Yeah, Amon Ross St. Brown is just having another great year, and this coming game against Jacksonville, he can become the 5th player, I guess, since 2000 with a touchdown reception in 8 consecutive games within a season. So, I mean, it's nice to hear about these things. This record, that record, haven't done that since that and that and that. Those are all marks of a great team and a very solid franchise right now. But the fact of the matter is yeah, he's got a special thing going, man, with Goff. St. Brown and Goff. It is wonderful to see if you're a football fan. I mean, they've got good relationship there with quarterback, wide receiver. It's clicking. It's clicking, and it looks great, and it does give Detroit such a great advantage going into any game with those two guys.
I think what looked great actually was seeing Dan Campbell and Jared Goff give hugs, and Dan Campbell say, "Hey, I told him to be aggressive, so leave it alone." Just goes to show you how much a quarterback loves his coach and vice versa. That's what you have. You have those two. There's so much respect for one another. Hey, dude, MVP? No. Super Bowl? Yes. And, I have your back, you have my back. Anything you want to add to close it out, Jeremy?
Let's see what happens. But we've already found out at 10:37 a.m. that Doug Peterson announced that
I know all about that, so I'll get to that in a
Trevor Lawrence isn't playing and Mac
moment.
Jones will be the starter.
All right.
That's And if it's anything like what he did versus Minnesota, I don't
Right.
like this for the
Yeah.
Jacksonville
And,
Jaguars.
and as I said, we'll get to that shortly. But yeah, that's a good point. That was definitely something that came up. I got the media relates today. I actually am on the Jacksonville Jaguars media distribution list. But yes, we will definitely be talking about that. Jake Bates, who couldn't make the Texans, by the way, but ended up going to the United Football League via the Michigan Panthers via Ford Field, right? This guy hits a 58 and a 52-yard field goal to win it. My goodness, can you find me a better feel good story than that? Brick salesman, all I don't know if I can find one.
Oh,
Jeremy,
I said it when I seen him kick the 64-yarder in the first game of the season. I said if he doesn't walk out of Ford Field and go to Allen Park, Brad Holmes should be fired because we've had
right,
kicking issues ever since Prater left. So, but it's a great story. You're talking about a guy that was a soccer kicker, never kicked a field goal or a kickoff in high school, goes to college, couldn't cut it on the soccer team, gets to be a walk on and a place kicker at three different colleges, but
right,
never kicked a field goal. Tried out for the Houston Texans against the other UDFA guy they have, who's not a slouch by any means, Taimi Fairbairn. Fairbairn wins the job and they cut Bates. He goes back to the family construction company to sell bricks, to sell masonry. Let's
right.
say it what it is, because brick sellers, there's a lot of different types of brick sellers, and 99% of them you don't want to be a part of. So masonry is what he was selling, guys. Italian marble, bricks for foundations, stuff like that. And he gets the call from the UFL, you want to kick for us this spring? He goes, well, it beats selling bricks.
You're right.
And he just proves that he was an unsung, unfounded gem of a kicker. Because let's say, face it, he set a record in the UFL for 64 yards. He's third on the all-time list for the Lions at 58. That's Jason Hanson and Matt Prater in
Right, I
Pittsburgh.
know. About to get to that too. Well, I
I'm
swear to God,
sorry.
this guy's got ESP looking at my stuff. But then again, no, I should say he's an encyclopedia slash ESP. But keep it going, anyways. All right, you're doing
and
good, man.
and he's just amazing. And there was one of the Detroit Lions fans that creates memes about the Lions and puts them in a NASA
All
suit.
right. Well, let's face the reality. Houston did get a good kicker, with all due respect to the Texans. They really did. He's guy's a good kicker. I just don't think that they expected on national TV that the guy they let go ended up kicking him out of the arena and losing a football game. But anyways, before you say anything else, I can get a crack at this one.
Well, yeah.
Before you start reading through my screen, Ballrick, and see what I'm going to talk about next. Yeah, I know.
Ah,
I get it.
yeah. Well, this is a great story. I mean, there's not much more to add. I mean, the Michigan Panthers play at Ford Field. He's comfortable with the surroundings. He's played at Ford Field now, and taken the UFL by storm with his kicking as well. And the other teams in the league. I don't know if anybody else scouted him, but I think they probably did because there are a lot of scouts from the NFL. Okay, I'm getting the 8 signal that there were 8 teams, okay, looking at him. But hooray to Detroit. I mean, hooray to the Lions, for bringing him in to camp, before camp even, and talking to him and seeing what he's made of. Total different environment, totally, up several notches from the UFL to the NFL. But the kid is steady. He's calm. He's not breaking down. He's not falling apart. He's not having a mental breakdown or anything. He's just very calm, and it's a great story. I love it. I love it. The Lions love it too.
Well, I know one thing. Dan Campbell doesn't have to gamble as much on fourth downs when you have a kicker like this. We know he was doing a lot of gambling on fourth downs last year. When you get a kicker like this who's practically automatic, then it makes your life a little bit easier. It's not to say you won't go for it on fourth down, but he's not having to do it as much when you feel very good at the kicking position. But speaking of Dan Campbell, he was 0-12 in the second half when trailing by 16 points. For sure, obviously, that one's you can scratch that one off the list too. He's now 1-13. Jeremy, not bad to get that one out of your closet.
Yeah. Yeah, the last time that a team had 5 interceptions and overcame 15 plus points was November 22nd, 1970. That was
Nice.
Mr. Johnny Unitas and the Baltimore Colts. Johnny Unitas threw 5 picks in one game versus who? The Chicago Bears, who came up on the losing end of the stick, 20-21.
Great fact. I like it. I actually read it, but I'm glad you brought it up. Go ahead, George.
Well, yeah, I mean, that those statistics are crazy stats when you hear about things like that. And of course, Johnny Unitas. I mean, God, he's one of the best quarterbacks. Jerry Green, our late friend, the Jerry Green, the sports columnist, he always said Johnny Unitas was the number one quarterback in his mind of all time. But yeah, I mean, things like this are happening. The team has got a great aura and sense around them. This excitement is still prevalent every day, every week here in Detroit, in the Motor City, but there's a lot more fun to come. But it's a great story.
All right, now I'm just going to mention the fact that Ballrick already did. Then we'll move on to the Lions and the Jacksonville Jaguars game. Bates obviously does join Matt Prater and Jason Hanson as the only kickers in franchise history to connect on multiple field goals of 52 plus yards in the same game. So Jeremy picked it off, and now I'm just making it official. That's exactly the company he's joining. And the Lions have always had a good history with kickers. Even Earl Mann back in the day was a pretty good kicker back in the 70s. So the Lions, not going to get into a lot of details, but when you don't score a lot of touchdowns, you better have good kickers.
Errol Mann, Eddie Murray, Jason Hanson,
Right.
and Matt Prater.
Right.
Now Jake Bates.
Right.
He's doing so good his first full year, even though it's not considered his rookie season. It's his rookie season, guys.
Right. Yeah. As I said, Lions have a good history when it comes to kickers, and you just mentioned a couple of other names. George, you and I both know that. No reason
Well,
to get.
yeah, it's incredible. I mean, when you look back and I mean, other teams might be able to pull something like that together, but Lions have always excelled in their kicking game, and they've had to because they've had so many times in the red zone over the years that they couldn't score. So yeah, they had to have a great kicker in Detroit just to keep them competitive, and they did. But this guy's really good. Yeah.
Yeah, no, he's really special for sure. All right, now we'll go on the Lions and Jacksonville Jaguars game. As Jeremy alluded to moments ago, Trevor Lawrence is out. The Jacksonville Jaguars are going to have a bye week anyway. Mac Jones is the quarterback. And I think what you have here for Jacksonville is Mac Jones has an opportunity to audition for 30 NFL teams. So it would be wise. Obviously, he had a hiccup last week when they lost to the Minnesota Vikings 12-7, but he gets another opportunity against an elite football team in the dome. So, Trevor Lawrence obviously needs a time off because of an injury. I don't know what Jeremy was laughing at.
No, it's just the way you did it. It was sounded like you were struggling to get out that he's trying to audition against an elite.
Well, I was trying to be nice about it. All right. Now, let's see. I have a passion for the Jaguars because
I know you do.
They enabled me to extend my career covering the NFL a long time. And thanks to Dan Edwards, who, by the way, is in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, a very dear friend of mine as well, that I've actually known through Bill Keenis as well. But Dan Edwards helped me out. So I have passion for the Jaguars. I really do. I covered them for quite a few years, and it was always great driving up to Everbank Field and being able to do that. But Mac Jones has an opportunity to go ahead, at least in this game, to not only help the Jaguars get a much-needed win, because we all know Doug Peterson is feeling the heat there, but he's also an opportunity to audition for other jobs because the quarterback play in the NFL is awful, and Trevor Lawrence has been beat up. So I don't know what to expect. So Jeremy, break down the quarterback situation for Jackson. We've already talked about the Lions all show, so we're going to focus on this segment, okay, mainly about the Jaguars.
Well, unfortunately for the Jaguars, they have what McCorkle Jones, and that's his full name, is McCorkle, has to overcome. He has to overcome a defense that only allows a 72.6 QBR and has only allowed one touchdown per game per quarterback they played. It's actually less than a touchdown. We played 9 games and only given up 8 defensively. So he has to learn to do something that he hasn't been able to do his entire career in the NFL, and that's read an NFL defense. I don't know if he's going to be able to do it. But if he is, and he at least can hit that elusive 63%, which is what's considered average in the NFL right now, he may get a backup job somewhere else next year.
I think the only thing I'm really looking forward to seeing in this game, because we've seen a lot now, only one thing I'm really looking forward to. We know that Jared Goff's going to bounce back. I know he will. I was impressed with the game that Jameson Williams had, too. This kid really looked good on Sunday. But I'm going to say one thing I'm looking forward to, and then I'll turn over to Eichorn. Zadarius Smith is going to be one fired up pass rusher. And I can tell you, if I were Mac Jones, I'd be filing for some major security protection because I have a feeling that Zadarius is going to make life difficult for the quarterback. Go ahead, George.
I mean, look at his stats this year, Mac Jones. Poor Mac. I know he hasn't been obviously the dominant is Lawrence, but 3 games played, completion percentage 64, only 139 yards in those 3 games. And again, he's had a very limited role. No touchdown passes this year, 2 interceptions for Mac Jones. Been sacked 5 times and has a QB rating of 47.6. Those are not good numbers. And obviously, he's not been the starter, but I understand that. But there's so much that. But you know what? It's a professional. He's a professional. He's a professional. This is the NFL. He can't be scared going into the game because if he's scared going into the game, well then good luck. I mean, you are going to get an onslaught. And you are going to be really down on. But he has to. They have to stay optimistic. I know the Jags have had a terrible season, but I mean, Mac has just got to try to not worry about what's coming at him. I mean, there's coaching staffs that help him plan the game or the offensive game plan. But what I'm saying is he cannot look scared. If he starts looking scared and tentative, you're looking at another 50 point or plus by Detroit. 50 points or more.
By the way, are you going to that game on Sunday?
Yes, I will be there.
Good.
I'll give all your friends your best wishes.
I don't know how many more I have over there. You can send my best to Amanda Holt, though.
I sure will.
I haven't been up there in a while. Just tell her I've got some medical issues. Would love to get back there, but obviously we'll see what. But I'm not politicking to go back to Jacksonville. I've enjoyed having my Sundays off at work and Saturdays covering the Miami Hurricanes down here as well. But no, they've done well by me. I think the thing that people have to understand about Mac Jones, though, is I don't fault him what happened in New England last 2 years. I mean, you keep changing offensive coordinators every year, let alone Matt Patricia being one of them. Seriously, really? Don't get me. I'm not getting you started, so just leave it alone. I'm talking. You don't have to say it. I'll do it for you this time, okay? So we're gonna save you to the Red Wing. Yeah, I know. Do your Charlie Chaplin sign language, silent movie business, but it is what it is. There you go. I'm not a good read lipper there. I'll read whatever. But I don't blame Mac Jones for what took place up in New England. He needed a fresh start. Doug Peterson's still a good coach. He didn't take a dumb pill to go to Jacksonville. I think part of the problems that you have in Jacksonville are not Doug Peterson related. I think they're more related to Trent Baalke because he's the one shopping for the groceries. It's just unfortunate they haven't been able to put it together at all in Jacksonville. But, I don't know what you're to expect on Sunday with Mac Jones, but I know the Lions are certainly looking to put on a much better performance than they showed on Sunday, but he had another win on NBC for the Lions in front of your old buddy Mike Tirico. Okay, so
I bet he's eating those words from that Chiefs game that night.
No kidding. I've been thinking the same way.
Yeah.
How do you feel about the Lions? Of course, he's had them a few times since, so yes. I'm sure he's heard about that a few times over for sure. Last topic we're going to close out on happens to be the Red Wings. Pavel Datsyuk was inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame. Great NHL career, obviously. His presenter was Ken Holland. Larry Murphy was obviously there to join him. I know he was previously inducted. Jeremy, some stats on Pavel.
Well, he played in 953 NHL games. He had 314 goals, 604 assists. He broke the points mold for getting into the Hall of Fame. And that's all you need to know. At 918 points in his career, over a 2001 to 16-year span, and he was a plus 249 in the ratings column. And he wasn't just a scorer and a passer. He actually was an enforcer on the front line. He spent 228 minutes in the penalty box. So he just wasn't a guy that could do it all. That could do one part of the game. He did all of it in his time. And he was so good at it that there in the last 10 years of the career, that when somebody would do something amazing on another team, they called it a Datsyukian move.
Right. Pretty interesting. I'll tell you a couple of other people that joined them. Players were Jeremy Roenick, who happens to be on our No Filter network, is Shea Weber. I mean, Jeremy Roenick has a great show for the network. Every now and then I have a chance to look at some of his stuff. He's just great. And I bumped into Jeremy Roenick one time years ago, and you can't ask for a much nicer guy. But for Jeremy Roenick and now Pavel Datsyuk to be teammates going into the Hockey Hall of Fame is really special stuff. Go ahead, George.
Yeah, we're talking about a player here who just was magic. His stick handling, his passing, his crispness on the ice, and just being there when he needed to be, either to score or to put the assist out there. But think about this, guys: 171st overall pick. That's a lot of teams, and including the Red Wings, who passed on him in the early rounds. But the fact of the matter is he did end up in Detroit, and that's what made Red Wing fans happy. Obviously, a playing career that went till 2021, and the difficulty was for Detroit media was to try to understand. He did not speak good English, and it's not his fault. I'm just making a statement here that really doesn't have to go anywhere else. But I'm just saying, he wasn't interviewed easily. He wasn't the face of the Red Wings in that sense because people couldn't understand sometimes his dialect. But I'll tell you what, on the ice, he proved to everybody. He proved to everybody that he belonged on that team, and he belonged on that Stanley Cup championship team as well. So he was a great player, and I'm so happy for him. And I'm also happy that guys like Larry Murphy and Steve Eiserman and Chris Chelios were there to welcome him too at the Hockey Hall of Fame. What a great honor.
There's only two words to describe what guys like Datsyuk and players that get drafted later are: hidden gem. And I
There you
repeat,
go.
hidden gem.
Yep.
I've used that word time and time again, many, many times. Hidden gem, and I'll tell you, Pavel Datsyuk was definitely one of those players, and I'm glad he got his due. So I guess my question to you, George, you've been around a lot more. You cover the Red Wings. Obviously I do when I can when I'm on the road. But how soon do you think Datsyuk's number is going to get retired?
That's a good question. I know they're going to honor him in November this month. Still, they're going to have a ceremony for him honoring him, but that's not to retire his jersey. I would think within a couple years. You still got to, he would probably be next. I don't think Sergei Fedorov's going to have. That's another story for another. I'm not even going to
Right.
go down there. But the Ilitch family would love to do it. I'm sure they would with Datsyuk because he certainly deserves it. And they also would like to get Zetterberg someday too in the Hockey Hall of Fame for his career. But again, that's a different type of situation. I hope Scott and Jeremy, it's within a couple of years they would retire up.
Okay. What are your thoughts, Jeremy?
I think it's within 5 years. I think it's just like how long it takes to get in a Hall of Fame for any sport. They make you wait 5 years to get in to be a first ballot guy. It should be about 2 to 5 years at least before they let you hang your number in the rafter.
I like that time frame. I also like the fact that I wrote a book called Lessons from the Microphone, Tuning into the Enduring of Visionary Leaders. There will be an audio book. We're hoping to have that released by December 15th. You can get it on Amazon, Kindle, as well as Barnes and Noble. The show here, I enjoy working here on No Filter Network. Pleased to be joined by George Eichhorn and Folk and Jeremy B. George will not be here next Monday, but Jeremy B is going to be joining me. Jeremy B is definitely in this book, as well as George, who wrote the foreword of it. Jeremy is one of my prized pupils here at the South Florida Tribune, and I also have a lot of people that I coach along. But Jeremy's on this show because he's made the necessary steps and sacrifices to earn his way on this show. This is a show that I take very, very seriously. I really do. I take everything I do seriously, and I only want people that are top-notch professionals that are sharp with what they do. I don't mind developing people, but it's important to make sure that we're on the same page, because the biggest thing I tell people in broadcasting is you got to be informative. You have to be able to entertain, and that's the primary thing that I try to educate people to do. We got to be entertaining and informative and have fun doing it. And that's the biggest thing that we do here. So again, this is Motor City Man Mouse Show. See us on Wednesday nights at 8 o'clock, 8:10 Eastern Time. And I enjoy doing it, and we'll continue to do it. We talk a lot of Detroit sports. Every now and then we'll incorporate some national topics as well. But right now, the Detroit Lions are looking awfully good. And I'm going to tell you something. Jeremy and I are next Wednesday night. We're going to be talking about Thanksgiving games, not only around the league, but the Lions as well. The Lions have been very gracious hosts. They've lost God only knows how many in a row, Jeremy, which you're going to find out anyways, certainly soon by next week. 6, okay? So they're going to see if they can get off the 6 game things.
It's due. Look at it. If you look, since Barry Sanders retired, we have been losing 6 in a row every Thanksgiving ever since he retired. So it's time for that to end.
Well, let's put it this way. Dan Campbell is a guy that seems to end every other streak on the planet, and we'll see whether or not he can do it. But you can find that Thanksgiving game
I'm
on
just
CBS on Thanksgiving Day. Go ahead, Jeremy.
I'm just upset that New England was the one that broke the longest home winning streak in the NFL by beating the Bears in their house Sunday.
What a shame. But it isn't a shame that we do this. And that, so, meanwhile, that does conclude this edition of the Motor City Man Mouse Show. So, on behalf of Jeremy Ballrick and George Eichhorn, my name is Scott Morgan, Roth, the Motor City Man Mouse. Thank you for joining us. Jeremy and I will be doing this solo next Wednesday night. Hope you can join us. But meanwhile, everybody have yourself a great week, and we will catch you on our next show. Good night, everybody. Thanks for tuning in.